Oh dear. Have you ever been in the kitchen and dropped something that's liquid and it just goes absolutely everywhere? That just happened to me. I was getting this container of double cream out of the refrigerator. It slipped out of my hand and it splashed all over inside the refrigerator, all over the floor, absolutely everywhere. It took me ages to clean it all up and was really annoying. So I thought I would do something fun and relaxing and make a book haul video because that makes me happy. And I know we're in the midst of Booker Prize season, those of us that follow the prize and are reading a number of the books that have been nominated, but also there are lots of other books that are being published, really exciting sounding new titles, and some of which publishers have kindly sent me. Other of these books I've bought myself, and one was actually kindly sent to me by a viewer, and that is the novel Our Way by Becky Manawatu. And this is a New Zealand novel that won a number of awards in New Zealand. I thought it might have a chance of winning, or winning, being nominated for this year's Booker Prize. I mean, maybe it would have won as well. But so this was kindly sent to me by New Zealander Sarah, who I talked about it in a previous video when I was looking at the list of the BBC's list of the best books of the year so far, and this was one of them. I thought it sounded really great. It's the story of a group of Maori children who are orphaned and following their separate stories, their separate points of view, and through these multiple points of view you get this bigger picture of the story and what is going on in their lives and in the country. And yeah, it just sounds like such a good book from the way it was described in that and other things that I've read about it. So it's actually not being published here, I think, until like later in August. And so Sarah kindly sent it to me all the way from New Zealand. So I'm really grateful for that. And thank you, Sarah. And I'm really looking forward to reading this. Another new novel that a lot of people are talking about and that I had to go out and get a copy of because I think it sounds so good is Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle, Zevin. And this is a novel about two people that meet when they're fairly young. They're both gamers, and then they reconnect later on in their lives and decide to try to create their own video game. And it goes on to become very successful, and it's following their story. And I'm somebody that was really into video games when I was a teenager and when I was younger, and so I think I'll really connect with this story, though I don't think you need to be into gaming to enjoy this story. From what I've heard, it's just a really poignant tale about life and friendship and love that's not romantic love, but love between friends, and but also the creativity of making this game with each other. And also I want to show the inside of this. It's like this rainbow color. It's so beautiful on the inside of the book. So that is just gorgeous. Another new novel with such an impressive title is Venomous Lumpsucker by Ned Beauman. And this is a novel set in, I think it's kind of future set, dystopian, where there is the most intelligent fish in the world might have gone extinct, or it might still exist, and two different individuals are sort of searching for it and hunting for it and seeing if they can track it down to see if it has still survived. And it's kind of a novel about environmental disaster and asking the question if we have the will in us in order to save the planet, or if we can even be bothered to. So yeah, looking at those environmental issues from quite comedic and kind of absurdist point of view. And I've never read Ned Beauman before, but I've always been curious to, and I've heard good things about this new novel. There's a new short story collection by Sayaka Murata called Life Ceremony, and I know I'm gonna have to steel my stomach before going in to read these stories after reading the end of Earthlings, which was quite shocking and grotesque, though I really appreciate her point of view. She gives such an interesting perspective, like psychological perspective on her characters, but yeah, she can write some really gross and disturbing scenes. So I think I preferred Convenience Store Woman over Earthlings, but yeah, they're both quite interesting. And also it's looking at so obviously these are stories about a whole wide range of characters and different subject matter, but one of the stories is described as being about a pair of schoolgirls keeps a grown man as a pet, and that seems to be a theme in Murata's work, because was it in Convenience Store Woman or was it in Earthlings when a woman starts keeping a man basically as a pet and treats him as a pet, or maybe it was in both of them. I can't quite remember, but yeah, that seems to be a theme that she writes about, which is interesting. Delphi by Clare, Pollard, and this is a novel about a woman, a mother and a wife in the year 2020 when the lockdown is occurring, and when this happens, she gets really fascinated with the subject of prophecy and looking at all these ancient texts and research about everything to do with prophecy. But while she gets so consumed with this, she is losing out on the present and the future with her family, and is kind of losing touch with them, even though they're all stuck together, confined together inside, which sounds like quite an interesting perspective. And yeah, I've heard some really good things about this novel, so I'm curious about it. Then I have a new book, which sounds like kind of a campus novel with a twist, called Disorientation, and it's about a character named Ingrid Yang who's very close to finishing her PhD about a canonical Chinese poet, and amidst her research and looking at different materials, she discovers something that she thinks has never been discussed before concerning this poet, and it leads her on this whole journey, but also makes her confront issues to do with Orientalism and stereotypes that the West has about the East. And I just love how the title of the novel goes across the page like this to highlight that of disorientation. Now, you know, I love a good list of books, and looking through a list of that someone might make to say that these are the best books of all time, and then going through to see what I've read and what I've not read and what I might want to read in the future. Well, John Sutherland has come up with a book called How to Be Well Read, where he's picked 500 great titles and written summaries of them, of why he thinks they are so important and well written, and why people should continue to read them. So is a big advocate for them. And this was actually first published 10 years ago, but there's this new edition which has an edition section at the end where he's added a number of books that were written and published in the past 10 years. And there's also a sort of introduction to that of how he thinks writing has been changed in that time. So obviously this is just really fascinating to flip through and look through and discover which titles he's picked out to highlight. I mean, there are some forgotten books like the novel Zuleika Dobson, which I mentioned in a video I made with Sarah, but which really isn't much read anymore, but which I think is a really funny and fascinating campus book. Yeah, he also mentions lots of other more recent titles like Girl, Woman, Other by Bernardine Evaristo. And although strangely in his summary of it, he says that it was called the Man Booker Prize that at the time when the novel won the award, but actually that was the first year that it was just called the Booker Prize. You know, the man was taken off from the title of the book award. But anyway, yeah, this is just a sort of fun book to flip through and read through his interesting take and summaries of these different books. Milk Teeth by Jessica Andrews, and this is a novel about a young woman that is born and raised in the north of England. She she moves to the South, has some very definite ideas about what she wants to do in her life. So it follows her story living in London and in Paris and then in the Mediterranean, and how she has to reckon with this image that she wants for her life versus the reality of her life. And so following her story, I've still not read Jessica Andrews' debut novel Saltwater, which won the Portico Prize last year, and which I've been meaning to get to. And this is an advanced copy of the book that the publisher kindly sent me, but also it came with this honey aubergine recipe, because I guess there's a lot to do about food in this book, and I love when books come with a recipe, because I really like to cook as well, and I love aubergines, or eggplant, as you might call them. I also have a few different new books that all center around the lives of trans women, and I think this is so important, especially here in the UK, where the issue of trans rights is still being hotly debated. One of the ways that we can have a more nuanced conversation about these issues is to read about and understand the lives and perspectives of different trans women. So to get so many different points of view through different books, I think is so great and good, and yeah, I'm just so glad that these are being published. So the first book is actually a nonfiction book and an essay collection by Juliet, Jacques, who's written a number of novels and collections of short stories and a memoir before. And this is a collection of her journalism from the past 13 years, where she is a journalist and who's wanted to primarily write about arts and culture and literature, but finds herself continuously drawn into writing about issues to do with trans rights as a trans woman herself, to defend her point of view and to try to help steer the conversation going on in this country. Then there's the novel Summer Fun by Jeanne Thornton, and this story centers around a young trans woman named Gala, who's a bit obsessed with this quintessential 1960s band from California who kind of disappeared from the scene, and they're rumored to have created this like masterpiece album which never actually came out. And so she investigates what happened to this band, and in doing so she discovers more things about the band than she expected, and about the front lead person in the band, and in doing so finds out more things about her own life as well. The Queens of Sarmiento Park by Camila Sosa Villada, and this is a novel from Argentina about a group of queer individuals and trans women that live in a single apartment complex. Many of them are sex workers, and one day one of them discovers an abandoned baby, and they take it upon themselves to bring in this baby and care for it and try to raise it together as a community. So it's about their stories, combined stories, and about what happens to this baby. And I just love the cover of this, and also the author Tori Peters says of this book clobbers you with its exuberance and beauty. Then I have a couple new really interesting sounding memoirs that have just come out. First off, there's a memoir in essay form called The Crane Wife by C.J. Hauser, and this author famously wrote this essay about how she decided to call off her marriage, and then very shortly after went off on this scientific expedition to study the whooping crane. And so it's following different sections of her life and her kind of unexpected experiences. Then there's A Working Class Family Ages Badly by Juno Roche, who was born into a working class London family in the 1960s and had quite a difficult childhood because their father was quite violent, and thought that they found some respite going to university, then was diagnosed as HIV positive and given a death sentence, but survived that and became an artist, and but went through some very difficult circumstances and was searching for some tranquility and peace in their life. And so it's following that very traumatic journey. Next, I have a novel called Under the Same Stars by by Alexandra Hemmensley, and this is a story about a young woman who's just set out on her own and is trying to establish her adult life, only to find that her father dies, and he leaves her a letter telling her that not only was he previously married, but he had a daughter from that previous marriage, so she has a half-sister that she never knew about. So it's about her forming a connection with this half-sister of hers in Norway. A new short story collection called God's Children Are Little Broken Things by Arinze Ifeakandu. This is a advanced copy of the book, but this is what the finished copy of the UK publication of this looks like. And these are 9 different stories about individuals that are reckoning with their past and trying to find acceptance in the present. They're 9 stories about queer male desire, and all set in modern day Nigeria. And it comes with endorsements from Damon Galgut, who says this is a beautiful, significant debut. Although he writes about queer lives and loves in Nigeria, Arinze Ifeakandu's voice is sensually alert to the human and universal in every situation. These quietly transgressive stories are the work of a brilliant new talent. Now, I know I've been talking about a number of different literary books with quite serious subject matter, but I also have a few different more genre-y type books that are kind of suspense stories or mystery stories that I think will be just more fun and kind of lighter reading. So first off, there's The Wilderness by Sarah Duguid, and this is a story about a couple that receive an unexpected phone call that there's been a tragedy and a death that has left 2 sisters orphaned. So they go to take care of these sisters temporarily, but when they go there and enlist the help of another individual to help them, find that things aren't as they expected, and there are kind of sinister things going on in the background. So sounds like quite a suspenseful story. The Lawn Weekend by Jilly McMillan, and this is a novel about 3 different married women that are all friends, and they go away with each other on a weekend to a very remote location. But when they get there, they discover a note saying that one of their husbands has been murdered. So it's following that tense story. Then there's a new novel which seems to be written in a kind of classic mystery style, which is A Fatal Crossing by Tom Hindle. And this is about a transatlantic journey to New York City that occurs in 1924. And on this journey, a body is found on deck. And there's a detective on board that is trying to discover who the killer is amongst 2,000 passengers. And finally, there is The Accidental Medium by Tracy Whitwell, and this is a novel about a woman who is a former actress, but her career has gone down the tubes, and she goes to work in a new age shop to partly to support her cocktail habit, but then when she's working there, she discovers she has psychic abilities that she never knew about before, and uses those abilities to uncover some mysteries by communicating with the dead. It kind of reminds me of Whoopi Goldberg's character in the movie Ghost. So yeah, I just love how it kind of reminds me of that and just sounds like a fun book. So those are all the new books I want to talk about. Let me know if you've read any of these books, or if you're interested in reading any of these books now, or if you're too busy reading the Booker listed books. So I know some people are avoiding it for the time being, or will start reading it once the short list is announced. But yeah, there's lots of reading to do. So I'm going to go relax and do some of that and get over my trauma in the kitchen, and I'll speak to you again soon. Bye-bye.